Hey friends, this is Ryan Smith, pastor at Common Thread Church. It's good to see you this afternoon. I've had a little kind of crazy time getting my equipment to work, so I'm hoping that it goes well now. We've been diving into the Beatitudes. I hope you enjoyed my wife yesterday. I thought she did an incredible job sharing her story and sharing about seatbelts. I want to say real quick before we get into it, kind of a quick announcement. If you are looking to get involved at Common Thread, or if you are interested in maybe staying connected to us, maybe you're already involved in another church, or maybe you're not ready to kind of dive into the church thing, but you want to know what's going on. We've opened up a new app and a kind of a new way to stay connected. It's how we do our internal communication. It's how we do our prayer request, how we just kind of let know what's going on, that kind of stuff, and how to stay in contact. So if you're looking to stay connected with somebody and want to join our crew and kind of figure out what that looks like, message me, let me know, and we'll let you know how to get involved with that. But we're in the Beatitudes right now, and I still believe that the Beatitudes are possibly one of the most neglected, ignored, or justified away kind of teaching of Jesus that we have. And for me, I still think we're in these crazy times, right? And in these crazy times, I always want to respond. And the world teaches us how to respond to different things, to different Facebook posts, or how we're seeing things in the news, or whatever. But the Beatitudes are kind of a way of life. They kind of teach us what to do, kind of a kingdom living kind of a concept of how we're to go about these things, how we're to respond. But they don't make sense, right? Because the world teaches us that that we're supposed to respond in certain ways, but the way the world teaches us, it doesn't seem like it's working, right? Because we're still becoming more divided. We're still more antagonistic toward each other, more combative, and so that's why I'm wanting to dive into these Beatitudes, is just to think about what it means for me to respond in a new way. And so that's what it's kind of my journey that I'm on in doing this series. And I want to invite you to just kind of join with me, and hopefully you're challenged in some way. So we're in the third Beatitude, and it says this: "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." And so I got to start off by saying this one Beatitude is the hardest for me. Now I can be meek at times, but when it hits the fan, right, when things get crazy, meekness does not bubble forth from my personality. It's not easy. It doesn't come as second nature. I can remember a moment in the past couple of years where one of my boys was in a full-on tantrum. And I mean, there was rage, there was anger, and this wasn't a short one. This one was lasting a long time. And this is where he was being very defiant. He was saying things they shouldn't say, throwing things, being physical. And so I started to get afraid that he was going to hurt himself or maybe hurt somebody in our family. And so I physically stepped in, right? I grabbed him and I put him in his room. I didn't want to shut the door, and I stood in the doorway. And he tried to push through, and then he kind of took a swing at me. And how did I respond? I stepped into his body. I looked down at him into his eyes, and I said, "You want some?" Now, how ridiculous is that, right? My manhood was so threatened that I was willing to go toe to toe with my own son to prove that I was the alpha dog, not my finest moment. And so to talk about meekness is not what I feel qualified to do, but I can't hide from it, right? It's one of those things I have to grow in, I have to challenge myself to grow in. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm kind of bringing forth some ideas that I'm wrestling with, and how it affects me. So let's start with the definition. The way I used to think of meekness was weakness, right? Docile. Someone who got picked on and then took it, but not in a good way. It was more like a doormat, right? And was kind of someone that was always abused at school or at work, wherever it might be. But my definition has changed, and so I found this definition that I want to kind of share with you. It says this: Albert Barnes offers a helpful reflection on this subject in Notes on the Bible. It says, "Meekness is patience in the reception of injuries. It is neither meanness nor a surrender of our rights, nor cowardice, but is the opposite of sudden anger, of malice, of long-harbored vengeance. Meekness is not weakness, according to Wayne Jackson. Meek is from the Greek term pros, which it does not suggest weakness, rather it denotes strength, brought under control. Strength, brought under control. The ancient Greeks employed this term to describe a wild horse tamed to the bridle. So I love that idea, that strength under control, that there's power, there's strength that's present, but it's not used at the whim of whoever has it, right? And of course, Jesus is the perfect example, and we've talked about that at Common Thread. This idea that he showed this third way kind of of living, and so the perfect example is, if you've ever heard him, the teaching of turn the other cheek. So in Jesus' day, turning the other cheek towards an oppressor did not rob people of their dignity. It was actually completely opposite. It caused the offending party to have to look at those that they slapped as equals. The slapping of someone on the right cheek most likely was done by the left hand, like so. And in doing so, you were slapping somebody that you consider beneath you. And so if you were going to turn your left cheek to them, then for them to use their left hand, they're going to have to close a fist and punch you. And in doing so, you're inviting them to be your equal. So in a way, it's being very combative, but not in the sense of force, using force, but challenging them to change how they see what's happening and seeing you as an equal. And so it's challenging the breaking of the cycle of violence, but it's also causing them to change, to think through what they're doing. And I think that's one of the greatest human examples of meekness is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the movie Selma, it shows King's colleague, his name is Andrew Young, explaining to someone wishing to react violently towards what's going against them. He said, to bring guns and violence, says there's only chance to win rights was to operate in a nonviolent manner. Above and beyond the strategic wisdom of this approach is contending against an overwhelming, unjust force. King grounded the movement and approach in Jesus' love ethic. And that's important. King believed that such love was not simply essential to bringing about reconciliation between individuals, but also critical to effecting social transformation on a massive scale. So in the civil rights era, King and his movement did not stoop to the inhumanity of their oppressors. He didn't give in to violence begets violence, right? In view of Jesus and Dr. King, those who think they are superior to those they oppress need to realize that only by becoming meek do we truly become human. So as early as 1957, King spoke of such nonviolent confrontation grounded in love. Here's what King said in a sermon at Christmas in 1957 at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. To our most bitter opponents, we say, we shall match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We shall meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we shall continue to love you. We cannot, in all good conscience, obey your unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as it is cooperation with good. Throw us in jail, and we shall still love you. Bomb our homes, threaten our children, and we shall still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators of violence into our community at the midnight hour and beat us and leave us half dead, and we shall still love you. But be ye assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. One day we shall win freedom not only for ourselves, we shall so appeal to your heart and conscience that we shall win you in the process of our victory will be a double victory. Every time I read that and I think through it, it just amazes me that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. To me, this is strength at its finest, right? It's strength that's brought under control. And I think this shows more strength than it would be to actually retaliate with violence, right? And so for me, this beatitude, blessed are the meek, is kind of a twofold challenge to me. It's this. First, is to change my understanding of strength, right? The idea to become someone who shows control of strength rather than the explosion of strength to encourage change. And here's the second thing, the second challenge for me. The challenge is to see the meek in this world. I think there are tons of people in this world we don't see. we ignore because we don't feel like they are worthy of our time, right? We look to the famous, we look to the rich, we look to the influencers of our time, we hold them up. But maybe, just maybe, we're being called to see the meek of this world with new eyes, that we're to hold them up instead. And so, I want to close with this modern day reading of this beatitude. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who no one else notices. The kids who sit alone at middle school lunch tables, the laundry guys at the hospital, the sex workers and the night shift street sweepers. Blessed are the losers and the babies and the parts of ourselves that are so small, the parts of ourselves that don't want to make eye contact with a world that only loves the winners. Blessed are the forgotten. Blessed are the closeted. Blessed are the unemployed, the unimpressed, the unimpressive, the underrepresented. Blessed are the teens who have to figure out ways to hide the new cuts on their arms. Blessed are the meek. You are of heaven, and Jesus blesses you. And so may we be people who seek the absurdity in our lives by showing strength through love and not power. Grace and peace.